But those J6 warriors, they were warriors, but they were really more than anything else. They're victims of what happened. All they were doing is protesting a rigged election. That's what they were doing. And then the police say, go in, go in, go in.
It's not just how close we came to watching our institutions crumble that day. The ongoing threat is real. I mean, look at what happened just Saturday night in Las Vegas when the former president, called the convicted felons from January 6th, those who rioted on January 6th and tried to block the peaceful transfer of power. He called them warriors who were somehow set up by the police. He's called them hostages. He's called them patriots. He's promising to pardon them. He's not promising to abide by the results of the next election. So this past threat is very real right now.
While the likes of Marjorie Taylor Greene pose alongside law enforcement, the likes of George Stephanopoulos are on hand to remind people that the party of law and order and Back the Blue continued to call domestic terrorists who attacked law enforcement with weapons and flagpoles that they claim to worship hostages. And going a step further, their cult leader decided to call them warriors.
And saying that you support the police or funding the police doesn't change the fact that there is a lack of police officers here because they don't feel the support here in the city.
As you probably know, we want to go back to January 6th. We talk about policing and supporting police officers. I think it's very important to support our Capitol Police that were here and protected the Capitol on January the 6th. I toured the DC jail with, in fact, one other member of this committee in the majority. And when we did that, unfortunately, those prisoners, those insurrectionists were treated like heroes. They were hugged. They were given handshakes by members of the majority, and particularly one member of this committee. Let's remember the facts. 17 of the 20 that were charged at that jail were charged with assaulting police. 6 of them had already pled guilty, yet they are being called, in some cases, heroes. They are being called hostages by folks in the majority. In fact, this right here is a reminder, these circles, of folks that actually are in the DC jail that have been called heroes, that have assaulted police, that have done nothing but essentially commit an insurrection and treason against this country. So when we talk about supporting law enforcement, sir, we talk about ensuring that we support our police officers. It's very important that we support the Capitol Police and not the 20 people that are being held and that are being coddled, supported, and uplifted by some members of the Congress, which I think is shameful, disgusting, and has no place, and quite frankly, hypocritical as well. To conclude, I want to submit this profiles of the January 6th inmates of the DC jail, which is an article that just outlines and lists exactly who these quote-unquote hostages, as called by some in the majority, actually are. Mr. Chairman?
Now, as we move ever closer to the debate between the incumbent president and his predecessor turned convicted felon and now opponent, the conversation was brought up on CNN by host Abby Phillip as to how things would pan out for the debate. To which ABC host George Stephanopoulos, as he has done several times now, went on the offensive, blasting Trump for his comments at his recent rally in Vegas calling insurrectionists warriors.
Have you ever seen, in your research and your time in government, anyone run for office really running against the very government that they are supposed to be overseeing?
Absolutely unprecedented, Abby. Absolutely unprecedented. We have never had a former president or a presidential candidate who refuses to accept the peaceful transfer of power, who refuses to say that he will abide by the Constitution, who's been indicted and impeached for trying to block the peaceful transfer of power. That is something that is absolutely fundamental to our democracy. It's one of the things that's made our democracy work for over 250 years. The idea, the simple fact that the former president continues to lie about the last election, that he did whatever he could on that day to block the peaceful transfer of power, is absolutely unprecedented in all of our history. It's not just how close we came to watching our institutions crumble that day. The ongoing threat is real. I mean, look at what happened just Saturday night in Las Vegas when the former president, called the convicted felons from January 6th, those who rioted on January 6th and tried to block the peaceful transfer of power, he called them warriors who were somehow set up by the police. He's called them hostages. He's called them patriots. He's promising to pardon them. He's not promising to abide by the results of the next election. So this past threat is very real right now.
And among other subjects Stephanopoulos discussed was his refusal to platform those who deny the results of the 2020 election, which led host Abby Phillip to ask about the question that really needs to be posed to both presidential candidates on June 27th. And the most important one, simply put, who won the 2020 election?
You know, this seems to be kind of also another litmus test for how to be in MAGA world. I mean, is this the new reality for this MAGA era of politicians, that they don't back down when they're confronted with facts?
Perhaps it is, but I think that poses a test for all of us in journalism as well. I've made it a point, if they will not accept those facts, I don't go on to other issues. I'm not going to go to participate in some kind of a sham where you somehow equate the legitimacy of an election or the peaceful transfer of power with a debate over tax cuts or environmental regulation. If you can't pass that fundamental threshold of saying, yes, the last election was not stolen, 2, I will abide by the results of the next election, then I think that's all voters and viewers need to know. I don't think if you're willing to lie about something as big as that, why should anything else they want to talk about be given any credence?
I mean, it's such an important point. I mean, we've got a presidential debate coming up right here on CNN later this month. As a journalist, as an American, what do you think is the most important question that needs to be answered from both candidates?
Who won the last election?
Yeah.
Very simple.
Yeah. And
who won the last election? Let's discuss and debate.
And we'll see. I mean, look, it's been asked by Donald Trump. He refuses to answer it correctly, but we'll see what he does when he's given that opportunity.
In front of 140 million people. You know, it's a little different on a stage like that.
Yeah.
And when it's an actual debate.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a real test.
And this is the important distinction that Stephanopoulos went on to discuss, is that we've all seen Trump lie endlessly about the results of the 2020 election at his rallies and of course on Fox News, where he's given endless oxygen to spew such disinformation. But what about across the stage from the man who he lost to, regarding the free and fair election that several of his very own appointed judges tossed any and every case that dared to claim that it was stolen, because this will lay bare the blatant disparity between both.
Until now, no American president had ever faced a criminal trial. No American president had ever faced a federal indictment for retaining and concealing classified documents. No American president had ever faced a federal indictment or a state indictment for trying to overturn an election, or been named an unindicted co-conspirator in 2 other states for the same crime. No American president had ever faced hundreds of millions of dollars in judgments for business fraud, defamation, and sexual abuse. Until now, no American presidential race had been more defined by what's happening in courtrooms than what's happening on the campaign trail. Until now. The scale of the abnormality is so staggering that it can actually become numbing. It's all too easy to fall into reflexive habits, to treat this as a normal campaign, where both sides embrace the rule of law, where both sides are dedicated to a debate based on facts and the peaceful transfer of power. But that is not what's happening this election year. Those bedrock tenets of our democracy are being tested in a way we haven't seen since the Civil War. It's a test for the candidates, for those of us in the media, and for all of us as citizens.
Between a man who's touring the country touting his economic resuscitation efforts versus a man speaking to a crowd he's left baking in the heat about how he's going to be great because, well, he never really lost.
Well, he just wants to, look, it's a political season. He wants to say, hey, I'm protecting you. Donald Trump is going to take your rights away. That's one of the reasons why the vice president was there. She ticked off the administration's accomplishments. We got rid of student debt. We capped the price of insulin. She went on and on. We appointed the first black female Supreme Court justice, signed in the gun law. And then the White House actually issued a fact sheet outlining measures to protect black history. All at the hands of Joe Biden.
Right, because Republicans are looking to take it away.
So all the great things that have actually happened under Biden, like, say, lowering insulin, they're basically thanks to Trump, right? Because he never really left, right? Right?
I do think democracy's on the line, and I think there's a reason that Democrats have outperformed all these polls since the Dobbs decision by 6 to 8 points. And, there's a lot to campaign on from both sides. As Steve said, there's a real debate to be had on the economy and, where taxes should go and how corporate should be treated versus individuals and hardworking Americans. And I think it's worth having that debate. I also think that we are starting to see inflation come down. It's off by 2/3. We need to continue to see it to come down. But today's numbers that showed cooling inflation was a good thing. And my guess is Steve and I agree that the Fed should not be cutting rates today, nor in September, because the labor market and the consumer sentiment's still strong out there.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.